The dry wind swept across the dusty town of Red Rock, carrying the scent of sagebrush and sun-baked earth. It was a place where few strangers came, and fewer stayed. The townsfolk went about their business tending horses, sharpening tools, or gathering at the saloon as dusk painted the sky a fiery orange. But that day, the routine was broken by the arrival of a young woman, unfamiliar and out of place. Her name was Clara, and she looked like she'd stepped out of another world, her white dress stained and torn, eyes wide with fear and uncertainty. She carried nothing but a small satchel and the weight of a past she didn't speak of. Clara stumbled into the town square, exhausted and trembling. She wasn't sure how she got there, only that she needed to find shelter before nightfall. The townsfolk watched her cautiously. In Red Rock, a woman traveling alone was either trouble or trouble's magnet. Just as Clara sank to the ground, a shadow fell over her. Tall and rugged, the man who approached wore a battered hat tipped low over his eyes, a leather duster worn from years on the trail. His name was Cole McGraw, cowboy with a reputation as rough as the land he roamed. He had seen many things, but Clara stirred something in him he hadn't felt in years. Protectiveness. "You shouldn't be out here alone, miss," Cole said, his voice low and steady like the creak of a well-worn saddle. Clara tried to stand, but her legs gave way. Before she could protest, Cole caught her, pulling her gently against his chest. His warmth was the only thing keeping the chill from her bones. "You'll be safe in Red Rock," he promised. As night fell, the town's small church opened its doors for Clara. But the story was far from over. The next morning, she awoke with a start, still leaning against Cole. The townsfolk had gathered, whispering behind cupped hands. Cole stood nearby, a stern look on his face as the local preacher stepped forward. "Clara," the preacher began, "in these parts, a woman without protection is vulnerable, and a man without a purpose is lost. We believe it's best for both that you and Cole become joined in marriage." Clara's eyes widened. She had no memory of agreeing to this, no desire for such a fate. But in Red Rock, tradition was law. And Cole, he simply nodded, as if resigned to the role fate had handed him. "I'll keep her safe," Cole said quietly, though Clara wasn't so sure she wanted to be saved this way. The reluctant bride and the cowboy to strangers bound by circumstance, with a Wild West full of dangers waiting just beyond the horizon. The morning sun cast long shadows over Red Rock as Clara sat on the wooden bench outside the saloon, her fingers nervously twisting the edges of her faded dress. The events of the night before still felt like a blur, a strange dream she couldn't quite shake, married by the preacher's word and the town's expectation to Cole McGrath, a man she barely knew. Cole watched her from across the dusty street, his rugged face unreadable beneath the brim of his hat. His jaw tightened as he adjusted the leather strap of his holster. Protecting Clara was now his burden, and the last thing he wanted was to fail. The town was restless. The surrounding plains, usually quiet and calm, held a tension in the air, like a rattlesnake coiled and ready to strike. Outlaws had been seen prowling nearby, and Red Rock's sheriff was stretched thin trying to keep order. Clara's mind raced. How did she get here? Why was she so vulnerable? And why did this man's presence both comfort and frighten her? The answers eluded her, but one thing was certain: she couldn't run. Not now. Cole approached, his boots crunching on the gravel. "You'll need to learn to ride if you're going to stay here," he said, voice rough but not unkind. "And how to handle a gun." Clara looked up, startled. "I don't know anything about guns, or horses." He nodded. "We all start somewhere." Their days fell into a strange rhythm. Mornings spent at the stable, Clara learning to mount and guide the horses under Cole's watchful eye. Afternoons practicing shooting, the sharp crack of bullets echoing across the valley. Evenings, the two would sit by the fire outside the saloon, trading stories and silence. Despite herself, Clara felt a shift inside, a flicker of strength she hadn't known she had. The Wild West was unforgiving, but maybe, just maybe, she could survive it. One afternoon, as Cole showed her how to steady her aim, a rider appeared on the horizon, kicking up a cloud of dust. The town's peace shattered. It was Sheriff Harding, his face grim. "Trouble's coming," he warned. "The Black Ridge Gang is headed this way. They don't take kindly to strangers or law and order." Cole's eyes darkened. "Then we better be ready." Clara's heart pounded. The Wild West was a land of danger and lawlessness, and now she was caught in its violent pull. She had no choice but to stand by Cole's side, his unwilling bride, learning to fight for survival. As the sun dipped below the jagged mountains, the town prepared for the storm. Clara wrapped her fingers around the worn handle of a revolver, the weight of it strange but empowering. Her past was a mystery, Her future uncertain, but one thing was clear. In Red Rock, survival meant standing your ground, and the cowboy beside her was the only ally she had. The night sky over Red Rock was a blanket of stars. But there was no comfort in their cold light. The town was tense, every shadow seeming to hold a threat. Cole McGrath and Clara stood side by side outside the saloon, eyes scanning the dark horizon where the Black Ridge Gang was expected to ride in with the coming dawn. Clara's fingers trembled as she checked the revolver strapped to her hip. The weight of the gun was no longer strange, it was a symbol of her new reality. She wasn't just a frightened woman anymore. She was a fighter. Cole adjusted his hat, his face grim beneath a cloud of stubble. They won't wait, he said softly. They want to fight. The Black Ridge Gang had terrorized towns across the West for years, outlaws with no law but their own. Led by a ruthless man named Jed Mallory, stories of their raids and shootouts were whispered by settlers. A warning to anyone daring enough to stand in their path. Clara swallowed her fear and nodded. Then we fight. Red Rock's residents rallied together, barricading the main street with overturned wagons and barrels. The sheriff's deputy armed the townsfolk, many of whom had never fired a gun before. Cole took command of the men, his voice steady as he handed out weapons and gave orders. When the first horses thundered into view, kicking up dust and chaos, Clara's heart pounded louder than the hooves. The gang was led by Jed Mallory himself, a tall man with a scar running down his cheek, eyes like cold steel. Shots rang out, echoing through the canyon walls. Cole moved like a shadow, firing and taking cover, his years on the range showing in every precise movement. Clara crouched behind a crate, returning fire as best she could, adrenaline pushing back the fear. The battle was fierce, and the town's spirit was tested. Clara found herself beside Cole, their earlier awkwardness replaced by a fierce partnership forged in gunfire. When Jed Mallory charged toward them, Cole stepped forward, steady and unyielding. "You'll not break Red Rock today," Cole said, his voice low and dangerous. A tense silence fell before the two men clashed gun against gun, wills locked in a deadly dance. Suddenly, a shot rang out from Clara's revolver, catching Yet's arm and forcing him back. The townsfolk cheered, and with a final stand, the Black Ridge Gang retreated, leaving behind their wounded pride and broken plans. As dust settled, Cole turned to Clara, his eyes softer than before. "You did good," he said quietly. Clara breathed deeply. The Wild West no longer just a place of danger but a place where she found strength she never knew she had. That night, by the fire, as the town celebrated their survival, Clara looked at Cole, the man who'd become more than just a protector. She was no longer the virgin who awoke as his unwilling bride. She was a woman who had fought and won, and the Wild West was hers to conquer. The dawn broke soft and golden over Red Rock, but Clara couldn't shake the restless feeling gnawing at her. The battle with the Black Ridge Gang was won, but the scars, both visible and hidden, run deep. She sat on the porch of the small wooden house Cole had arranged for them, watching the morning light dance on the rugged mountains. Cole was out at the stables, tending to his horse, but Clara's mind drifted back to the night she first arrived, waking against his chest with no memory of how she'd come to be his bride. The town's judgment had been harsh, and the preacher's words had felt like a noose tightening around her freedom. Her past was a locked box, one she wasn't sure she was ready to open. She only knew fragments, a name whispered in dreams, a face that vanished like smoke, and a feeling of being hunted. Cole returned, brushing dust from his sleeves. He sensed the silence hanging between them and sat beside her on the porch step. "You've been quiet," he said, voice low. Clara hesitated, then met his gaze. "I don't remember much about where I came from, only that I'm running from something." Cole's eyes darkened with understanding. "Running won't save you, but facing what's behind you might." Before Clara could respond, a rider thundered into town, his horse kicking up a storm of dust. The sheriff met him with grim news. A bounty hunter had been spotted nearby, searching for a woman matching Clara's description. Fear twisted in Clara's chest. Was her past finally catching up with her? That evening, as the town settled into uneasy quiet, Cole stood guard outside their home. The stars blinked coldly above, but his attention was on the shadows lurking just beyond the firelight. "You don't have to face this alone," he said, keeping his voice steady despite the tension. Clara swallowed hard. "I don't know who I am anymore." Cole's hand found hers, rough but reassuring. "Then we'll find out together." The night stretched on, thick with uncertainty. Clara knew the road ahead would be dangerous, that her past might pull her back into a world she wanted to forget. But for the first time, she felt a spark of hope, a chance to rewrite her story. with the cowboy who had become her unlikely protector and partner in the Wild West, where the law was often what you made of it. Clara and Cole were bound not just by duty but by something stronger, trust, and perhaps something like love. The wind stirred the dust as Clara stood on the edge of Red Rock, her revolver at her side and Cole just behind her. The hills beyond the town were quiet for now, but they both knew the silence wouldn't last. Somewhere out there, a man with blood on his hands was hunting her. A man she once called father. Clara had remembered. The memories came back in fragments, but they were sharp enough to cut. Her father, a corrupt land baron from the Eastern Territories, who ruled over others with a brutal hand. She had tried to escape that life, the arranged marriage, the locked gates, the bruises hidden beneath lace sleeves. She fled west, not knowing where her boots would land, until fate dropped her into Red Rock, and into Cole's arms. Now her past had caught up. "You sure about this?" Cole asked, his hand resting lightly on the butt of his revolver. Clara nodded. "He won't stop unless I end it myself." Cole didn't argue. He knew the West made its own kind of justice, and sometimes, a woman had to fight for her freedom with grit, fire, and lead. Just past midday, the bounty hunter arrived. He rode alone, but he wasn't just any gun. His name was Luther Cross, a killer with a badge from back east and a stack of blood money in his pocket. Behind that cold stare, he carried a promise from Clara's father: return her alive, or not at all. The town watched from behind closed shutters and cracked doors. Red Rock knew what was coming. Clara stepped forward. "I'm not going back," she said, voice steady as a rifle's aim. Luther sneered. "Your daddy thinks otherwise." "I don't care what he thinks." Luther drew. But Clara was faster. The shot rang through the canyon like a thunderclap. Luther staggered, disbelief in his eyes as he fell to the dirt, the dust swallowing him whole. The silence afterward was deafening. The kind of silence that came when something heavy had passed and something new could begin. Cole approached slowly, eyes never leaving hers. "You all right?" She holstered her gun. "I will be." They stood in the road, surrounded by the town that had once forced them together. But now, no preacher, no outlaw, no past had any hold on her. She wasn't a bride anymore, reluctant or otherwise. She was her own woman. And Cole. He wasn't her captor. He was her equal. "You still want to be married?" he asked, after a long silence. Eyes honest and unguarded. Clara smiled, not the polite kind she used to wear in ballrooms, but a real one. Born of grit and survival. "Ask me again," she said, properly. "This time, I'll say yes." Cole tipped his hat, a slow grin spreading across his face. "Miss Clara, would you be my wife? For real this time? Not 'cause of a preacher, but because you want to." She stepped closer, dust and gun smoke still in the air. "I do." And in the heart of the Wild West, two people who had been strangers, then survivors, found something close to love. Forged not in vows or rings, but in fire, freedom, and the dust of Red Rock.